But first, let's start with Rodgers. Mark Caboli gives his best guess for the decision timeline now that we are officially post-draft in the NFL offseason. Rodgers still isn't here. What could be the next checkpoint? What could be the next break where we actually feel like Rodgers is going to decide here? And he thinks it's going to be in a few weeks, not too far away. He did a mailbag for Twitter. Bunch of Steeler fans write in, give their questions. He responds. And this one was number 3 in his mailbag of questions. Justin Lang, at Justin Lang 12, asks, when is Aaron Rodgers coming home? And Caboli responds by saying, I assume you mean Pittsburgh when you say home. I'm glad you are finally listening to what I've said for 2 months now. I forgive you. I say May 22nd, but definitely before OTAs start on May 27th. So we're not too far away, according to Mark Caboli. Now, Big Ben has his thoughts on the matter. Like, this wouldn't be, according to Caboli, this wouldn't be too far. This wouldn't be to the point where you're making players mad. You know, you're making more people within the organization a little bit upset and really questioning what we're doing by giving Rodgers all this time to make his decision. I feel like at that point still there's nothing going on between now and OTAs, right? Technically nothing going on. So what would Rodgers be doing anyway if he signed here? Now, he could call up some teammates, build some rapport, but in terms of actually being with the team in an official capacity, this makes sense. This does. But Big Ben had some of his thoughts on how he'd handle this Rodgers situation. And he's wondering if Rodgers really still wants to play and that the Steelers need to set a hard deadline, because that Caboli answer doesn't really give us anything in terms of the Steelers' hard deadline, soft deadline, when they want it to happen. Obviously, if it was up to them, he would have already decided like a month ago. They would want it to happen sooner rather than later. They would want it to happen ASAP, obviously. But there still doesn't seem to be any inkling of the Steelers giving him a deadline, whether it's a hard deadline, soft deadline, just any real timeline for him to make this decision outside of what Tomlin said a few weeks ago down at that coaches meeting, where he said, yeah, around training camp would be a point where we feel like we need to know an answer. Outside of that, it's still up in the air. Now we're getting some remarks from Rooney. We're getting some reports coming out of Steelers camp saying that the Steelers definitely think Rodgers is going to be here. It's only a matter of time. All the signs are pointing in that direction. But there's really no deadline to when that decision has to be made. We also got that little rumor, that little report before the draft that the Steelers reached out and were looking for some type of answer. And apparently we didn't get the exact answer we're looking for, that he's saying, yeah, let me sign the contract right now. But stuff came out after the draft that even though Rodgers didn't sign, he didn't give the definitive yes or no, that he gave the team, he gave the organization some reassurances that he'll be a part of the group. But Ben says at some point you need to set a deadline, because at some point Aaron needs to start learning the offense, get with the guys. What is that cutoff date? I don't know. Only Coach T and Rooney and Omar know that. At some point, you have to say what's best for our team is to probably just move on. That might sound crazy because it's Rodgers, but at some point you start questioning, does Aaron really want to play? I respect that man. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, truly generational talent. I would love to see him go out there and play. I'd love to see him in the black and gold. I'd love to see that ball go down the field like I know he can do it. But I don't want to see him get beat up and not be the Aaron that we love and that we've respected and come to know over all these years. Okay, then. Now, in a perfect world, I agree with 7 here. In a perfect world. But in reality, with how our quarterback room looks right now, I don't really think there has to be a hard deadline. In a perfect world, yes, there should be a deadline soonish for a lot of the reasons that Ben gave here. Rodgers can get more involved in the offense. That's only going to help. You build some rapport with the teammates sooner rather than later. That's only going to help. And you have an answer at the most important position. You have a defined direction at quarterback once you know Rodgers is here. So putting a deadline on that, trying to get that done as soon as possible, I get it. And even if Rodgers says no, you know where you're at least. You know where you stand. That would be the benefit of having a deadline. You know the direction, you know the vision, you know exactly what you're working with for OTAs, minicamp, and some of these offseason checkpoints. But let's be real. That's a perfect world. That's, utopia. It actually would have been Rodgers, again, signed like a month ago or signs today. That's the perfect world. That's what we all want. That's with the stars all aligning, right? But let's be real. Rodgers hasn't made a decision up to this point. He does things on his own timeline. He does things his own way. It could be when Kaboli says, it could be whenever. And with where our quarterback situation is right now, if Rodgers waits till training camp, middle of training camp, even early August, even if we're a preseason game or two in, are the Steelers really going to be saying no? It might be awkward. Some players might be butthurt about it for a day or two because Rodgers wasn't here the whole time. Rodgers didn't give us a definitive answer earlier. Rodgers didn't go out of his way to be a Steeler this offseason. Yeah, I get how some players, I get how some within the organization might be rubbed the wrong way with that, and Rodgers still ultimately gets to be here after missing a lot of this time over these next couple months. But all you need to do is have Rodgers give a speech, say something to the team, get in front of the team on the podium, say, listen, I'm sorry for taking so long. Had some personal stuff. I was doing what was best for me and my family, but I'm here now. I'm all in. Let's go win 7. Let's go win a Super Bowl. I think any animosity or any awkwardness that was there will be washed away. But Ben's not wrong. Deadlines are created for a reason. So you can have answers. So you can have a vision. You can have proper direction of what your future is going to be. But on the flip side with Rodgers, he's been upfront about where he's at. He said he's not holding anyone back. He gave the same info to the Giants he gave to us, and that is he's got some stuff that he's dealing with. He's not sure exactly when he's going to make a decision on who he's going to want to play for, if he's even going to want to play in 2025. And you saw how the Giants handled that information. They went out and got 3 new quarterbacks on their roster. Drafted Dart, signed Russ, and also signed Jameis. And the Steelers, they're chilling. They're respecting Rodgers' space. They must feel like they have the inside track. They must feel like he's really going to sign here. And that's what all the reports are saying. So that's where we're at. And I don't think, to be honest, even though Ben says there should be a deadline, realistically, I don't think there needs to be one. In a perfect world, yes, we want a deadline. We want to know where we're at. But with Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, and Will Howard being our 3 quarterbacks this season, if Rodgers wants to wait till training camp, are we really going to be the ones that tell him no? Especially since, too, he's not signing a multi-year deal. He's not going to be signing for $30 or $40 million. He said he'll play for $10 million, and that's a contract that's less money than Russ and Fields. Come on now. Yeah, so I just don't really think there's that hard of a deadline. I'm going off of what Tomlin initially said, and that is training camp, end of July. Because then I feel like you could start reading the room. Does Mason take a hold of this team? Is Mason balling out in training camp? Then you could say no. We're moving on. It's too late, Aaron. But if it's not as good with Mason and Will Howard and Skylar Thompson, I think if anything, you're calling up Rodgers and trying to give him another pitch. You know, we'll throw another $5 million on top of that $10 million if you decide right now and get over to Latrobe.